Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Brent for Leather. It's me, Brent. You may know me from the Bastard Cast. You may know me from my Instagram or Twitter or whatever. No matter how you're coming in to listen to this, I fucking appreciate it. Just sitting down, trying to kind of hash out what I want to do for my first episode. It's the first time I've ever done anything like this solo. I've got the Bastard Cast, but obviously I've got Will on there with me every week and bouncing stuff off of, so we're going to see how I do solo. Sitting here drinking a nice glass of bourbon, trying to gather my thoughts together, and I think mostly what I'm going to talk about today is sort of my origin story into heavy metal as a whole, and kind of some of the rabbit holes it took me down. Gonna definitely have to get a guy who is pivotal to my development in this genre. A man named Mr. Casey Herring. I'm gonna have to get him on here at one point to kind of give his perspective on things, as myself being the nerdy, socially awkward, introverted ninth grader that I was, who had just moved, same school, but new neighborhood. Didn't really know anybody there too well. It wasn't really my clique of people that I hung out with, and I didn't have a lot of friends anyways. But I moved into to this kind of farmhouse we were renting out in the middle of the country, and got on the bus one day, and there was a guy sitting back towards the back, and there were some empty seats back there, so I just kind of made my way back there, and I don't know what I was wearing. I was probably wearing a fucking Harley Davidson long sleeve shirt or some stupid shit like that. And no offense to anybody that wears Harley shit. Harley shit's cool. I've never owned a bike, and I've almost never been on one. So me as a ninth grader trying to wear one, I guess it was some sort of a fucking status symbol or something. Who knows? Didn't work. But so I sit down, and this guy kind of gets my attention, looks at me, comes over there and sits down, and he's just like, "What you listening to?" Because I had my CD Walkman Discman, as it was called in those days, on, and I don't even remember what I was listening to, but at that time in my life, I would have been listening to things like the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, or Sublime, or 311, or Live, or fucking REM, maybe Rush. That's the one band out of all of those that I still have a strong affinity for. Could have been listening to some very topical Black Sabbath, nothing in the deep catalog, because I just wasn't really exposed to it, or any number of things like that. And so I showed him, and he was just like, "Well, that's pussy shit. You're not going to listen to that shit if you live in my neighborhood." And I'm like, who the fuck is this motherfucker to talk to me this way? Now, again, I was not the loud, boisterous, cocksure motherfucker that I am now. I'll headbutt a fucking bear now. I'm crazy. I'll get my ass kicked. I'm not afraid of getting my ass kicked. But I'm not going to back down from fucking anybody. So he says, "No, you're not going to listen to that shit if you're going to live in my neighborhood and ride my bus. You're going to listen to fucking Slayer and Megadeth and Merciful Fate and Judas Priest and Iron Maiden." And I'm like, what the fuck? I don't think I'd ever heard of any of these bands other than, I had topically heard of Slayer, some random person talking about it or something or another. And of course I'd heard your random Judas Priest classics on the radio, like, Living After Midnight, maybe Breaking the Law, Some Heads Are Gonna Roll, maybe You Got Another Thing Coming, stuff like that. I'd never heard anything by or of Merciful Fate. I'd heard of Megadeth, and, maybe I heard Symphony of Destruction or A Tout Le Monde or something another on the radio, but I didn't remember it. About the only metal that I would have listened to in those days, like I said, would have been maybe, Black Album, Metallica, or something like that. Let's see. Load and Reload would have both been out by then. Perhaps maybe I listened to that. Who knows? It wouldn't have been much. But so I felt kind of intimidated. I'm like, man, what the fuck? But again, at that age, I was way too much of a chicken shit to say anything. And so I decided to fucking just go along to get along, and I was like, okay, well, fuck, this is what I've got, sorry. So, that's good bourbon. So, he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna bring you some fucking homework. So, didn't think anything more of it, and go on about my day, get back on the bus that afternoon, go home, as I'm getting off the bus, he's like, remember, I'm going to bring you some fucking homework. So, sure enough, the next day I get on the bus, and he comes and finds me, and he sits down, and he goes, here, you're going to listen to these, and you're going to fucking like them, and you're not going to listen to any of this other shit that you've been listening to. Pretty fucking presumptuous of a 9th grader, but, it is what it is, and he got me to where I am today. He hands me 2 CDs. I want to say one of them may have been a burned copy, and one of them would have been the original that I had to get back to him. But the 2 CDs he gave me, which changed my outlook on life forever, would have been Megadeth, Killing Is My Business, and Business Is Good, and Merciful Fate 9. Now, there are certainly people who will say that Killing Is My Business is the best Megadeth record. I'm not one of those people. I very much enjoy that record, but it's not my favorite. I still think that Rust in Peace is probably my favorite. But Merciful Fate 9, I don't think many people are going to say that's their favorite Merciful Fate record. And while I certainly don't believe it is their best, I would probably go down to say that that is my favorite now, due to nostalgia reasons, just because of the time and place in which it was handed to me, and so on and so forth. So I get those, and I go home, and I put it on, and I don't remember which one I put on first. I want to say I put on Megadeth first, because I had at least heard of them. And I listened to that whole record, and honestly, I was kind of jarred. Like, I didn't really know what to think, but I think I fucking liked it. So I take that off, I put on Merciful Fate 9, and the moment that King Diamond just starts in with one of his falsetto screams, I don't know. Like, a random person may have been, maybe frightened or not necessarily at ease with it, but it was like it scratched an itch that I didn't know I had. And I want to say I listened to both of those records nonstop until I went to bed that night. I get back on the bus the next day, and I was like, dude, I need more. So I give him those back, and over the next, few days and weeks, he would bring me random stuff. He brought me a random Slayer CD. I want to say he brought me, like, Hell Awaits or something. And I'll never forget somebody seeing that. I want to say it was my mom who thought she saw it. No, it couldn't have been my mom, because there's no way my mom knew who Slayer was. But somebody saw it and was just like, that Tom Araya guy in Slayer, he's a member of the Aryan Nations. And, at the time, hey, I was a history buff, but, I wasn't up to date on my post-German neo-Nazi groups or anything like that. And I didn't really fucking know that he was fucking Chilean, which, I guess would make fucking sense in retrospect now with, my understanding of history and everything else. Who fucking knows, But I listened to that, and I was just like, wow. And then he brought me a cassette tape of Judas Priest, Painkiller, and my life was changed forever.
Ian Hill from Judas Priest, and you're listening to Hell, Brent for Leather.
I started doing this podcast as a suggestion from my wife, actually. And I was saying something one day about how I miss doing radio, because I did radio for a little while on KFAI here in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. KFAI being a local community radio station, KFAI Fresh Air Radio. And there was a show on there from the 80s, and it may even still be going on now. Unfortunately, I've kind of fallen out with the people that are in charge of it now for the most part. That's a story for another day that I'll probably never really get into. Just, people kind of grow apart. But there was a guy named Earl Root who started it. And unfortunately, Earl's been dead since, I want to say he died in 2008. May have been 07, but I think it was 08. It was not too long after I moved up here to the Twin Cities from Georgia, where I'm from. And he started this radio show on KFAI from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. Sunday mornings. And he started this show. And Earl was well known and well respected by a great number of people. And he started this show and had all sorts of people in over the years. I mean, he was personal friends with Ronnie James Dio, where Dio would just call him at random times. I'll never forget hearing those stories and just the things that they talked about and such. And he was great friends with Gene Hoglan from Death Angel and Testament, and not Death Angel, Jesus fucking Christ, Dark Angel and Testament, and all the other band, Death Clock, and all the other bands that Gene's been in. A little aside, I'm in a flub things from time to time, but as my friend Nathan, the Sword Lord Block, told me one time, Brent, you've forgotten more about metal than that hack Eddie Trunk has ever known. And I took that as the highest compliment that I've ever received by anyone. And so, I'm in a flub things from time to time because it's like that episode of The Simpsons where Homer learns so much that he starts to just forget the most trivial of things that he should remember no matter what. And I'm kind of like that. My brain is so full of useless knowledge, most of it around, honestly, The Simpsons, Star Wars, and metal. And, I'm in a flub things from time to time, but, I'll do my best to keep it together and remember things properly. But, so, anyway, Earl had this station, or not this station, this show on this station that he had for many, 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 many years. And, unfortunately, he came down with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And sadly passed away after a long battle with that in, like I said, late 2007, early 2008. I want to say actually it was February of 2008, now that I think about it, because I've got a flyer around here somewhere from his benefit. And before he died, I didn't really know him super well, but I'd met him because I had some great mutual friends with him. Nathan that I was talking about a moment ago, and some other people that were really good friends of his, or at least business acquaintances with him. And before he died, he was also he had a store called the Root Cellar, and unfortunately it had closed before I came up here, and it was just the most badass record store that you could imagine up here in the Twin Cities, from what I hear. And he had a good bit of everything, but he specialized in metal. And I really wish I could go back in time and just go through the archives of those records and look around. But before he died, I wound up buying a few records off of him because he still had a lot of his records in a storage unit. And I'd kind of tell him, hey, this is what I'm looking for if you've got it. Oh, I'm sure I've got that somewhere, blah, blah, blah. But to this day, one of my most prized possessions is a white vinyl copy of Fight War of Words that I bought, and he drove out to me one Sunday afternoon all the way across town on his motorcycle, just as an excuse for him to get out and ride his bike when he was sick, because it was, one of the things that made him still feel alive. And sadly, not too late after that, he passed away. But when he passed away, the show was still going, and he wasn't on every week due to being sick, but he made it, as much as he could. And he had some people kind of, help him with it, who were either co-hosts or helping to produce or whatever, or just, friends that were there all the time and such. Two of those people being Mr. John Allen and Mr. Tim Honebrink. And when Earl died, Nathan wanted to help facilitate the show as well, because no one wanted to see that show die. It was a fucking staple. And so Nathan, being the concert promoter that he was, and just general overall metalhead as well, whom I met at Prog Power 4 Prog Power 5, rather, in, I want to say, 2005, or 2000, no, I'm sorry, Prog Power 5 would have been 2004, if I remember correctly. I met him there, and that was actually the reason why I moved up to Minnesota, was to run a movie theater of his. But that again, nothing we really need to go into all that much. But so Nathan wanted to help keep the show alive. And both Tim and John had promised Earl, basically on his deathbed, that they were going to help to facilitate that in any way possible. Not necessarily the Nathan involvement, but the involvement of keeping the show going. And I think Nathan had Earl's blessing and such. So Nathan started doing, I want to say, an hour or an hour and a half every Sunday night on that 5-hour block. And maybe it wasn't every Sunday, maybe it was every other Sunday or something to that extent. But I used to go up there with him from time to time because we were roommates at the time. And so I'd go in there and just jump on mic and talk shit with the guys and such. Fucking cordial, fun time. The 4 of us or 3 of us or whoever was there that week, maybe even 5 of us on the mics telling stories and listening to music and kind of making some of our picks and stuff that we wanted to be on the radio and such. Because, where else are you going to hear Carcass and Frank Zappa back to back, And so that was going for a little while, and I guess Tim and John and them liked my contributions a lot, and so they decided to give me an hour every 2 weeks. And actually, no, now that I think about it, Nathan wasn't every week. It was every 2 weeks because they gave me the alternating 2 weeks. So I still went up there every weekend, every Saturday night, because I worked... I had a much later work schedule than I have now, so I could facilitate staying up until 3 or 4 in the morning pretty easily. So I'd go up there on the alternating weeks and play an hour to an hour and a half, depending on what they were feeling of my own stuff that I wanted to play. Because Nathan and I share a lot of the same musical tastes, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that I like that he doesn't, and vice versa. So we were trying to figure out a name. Hey, what am I going to call myself? What am I going to do? Just Brent on the root of all evil. Sure, would it work? Absolutely. But I want to set myself out from the pack. So we were kind of brainstorming back and forth for a few days, and Tim decided that Hell Brent for Leather sounded good. And I fucking loved it, because I am a massive, massive Judas Priest fan. I have been a fan since the moment I got that Painkiller tape, which we'll get back to in a few minutes. And just, they are my all-time favorite band. There's no band on this planet that I love more than Judas Priest. Are they the best metal band in history? No. Are they my favorite? Without a doubt. So he called me Hell Brent for Leather after the famous song and record Hell Bent for Leather. And so I did that for, I don't know, a year and a half or so. And then, unfortunately, Mr. Hornebrink and I had a huge falling out. To the point where, and I'm not going to disparage him as much as sometimes I'd like to. If I were to see him today, we'd probably shake hands and be okay. But I want to say, and like I said, I don't know this for certain, but just being around people like that from time to time, you kind of pick up on it. I want to say Tim probably had some addiction issues, and he got very paranoid about certain things. And he flipped out on me in the station one night, told me to leave, and then sent me a message saying that if I ever came back again, that he would personally call the cops and have me removed. I had never threatened anyone. I had never done anything to insinuate threatening anyone. That's not really my style. But Hell Brent for Leather was done. So, fast forward a little bit. Tim's behavior becomes more and more erratic, and he was ousted from the show. And a couple of people came in and helped take the mantle over from him, who, they were already there. I mean, it wasn't just one night Tim was there and then the next night he wasn't, and new people were there. All of these people were there at once. And they just kind of phased Tim out, and then one day said, hey, you're not welcome back. Well, of course he flipped the fuck out, because, goddammit, this is my show. Earl gave it to me. We'll never know what Earl said on his deathbed, because there are 2 different people that say Earl told them to carry on the show in his name. One of them being Tim, one of them being John. Now, I know and like John very much. I am more apt to believe John on that, although I think that over time, Earl and Tim were probably closer, but I do know for a fact that Earl and Tim had several fallings out over the years, whereas I don't think Earl and John ever had a falling out that I'm aware of. And so, John facilitated taking it out of Tim's hands and taking it over for himself and a couple of other people that came in. Mara, who came in, and her husband helped from time to time. and just some other hangers-on around the studio, much like myself. And so I was invited a little while later, maybe a year and a half, to come back. Hey, Brent, we really miss you on the station. Come back down, same thing as before, do an hour and a half, whatever you want to play, talk some, tell some stories. Just come down and hang out. You're a good fucking dude. We like hanging out with you. So I did that for a little while longer, and then having to change careers and such kind of got in the way of me being able to stay up super late, because once you get set on a set schedule of having to wake up at 5 or 5:30 every morning, 5, sometimes 6, sometimes 7 days a week, back during that time, it gets excruciatingly hard to reset your sleep clock to, sleep later than 7 a.m., which I still have problems with now. And stay up until, by the time you drive out there, you do your show. Even if you leave right after you're done at 2:30, 2:45, let's say 3, from there it's still going to take me 45 minutes to get home at a minimum. So not going to bed until like 4. And then I'm going to wake up at 7 or 8. And it just wrecks me because, unfortunately, I've got sleep apnea, and I just don't sleep well as it is. So I think the time of doing that is behind me. Well, reconnected with Mara maybe 2 years ago. Something like that. Yeah, no, probably about 2 years ago. And she was like, hey, you should come back down to the Roots sometime. Maybe not have a regular thing, because I know your schedule won't really allow that. But, maybe come down once a month, once every couple of months or something or another. And I said, fuck yeah, I'd love to do that. And then COVID happened, and everybody went crazy. And, I'm not washing my hands of the situation. I certainly was harsh with people over the last year. I think everybody was a little harsh with each other if you didn't fall lockstep in with exactly what everyone else around you was thinking. And we just all kind of, I think, ostracized each other to a degree. And I'm looking around on Instagram one day and Facebook one day, back when I had a Facebook account, and I saw that she had not only unfriended me, but she had blocked me. And I'm like, wow, I don't usually try to do much of anything to facilitate being blocked. Every once in a while I'm going to piss somebody off and they're going to unfriend me, and then 6 months later we'll have a beer and everything's good. But yeah, that was the last I didn't hear from anybody in that camp other than John Allen, who texted me a few weeks ago, actually, and I don't even know if he's still involved with the show at all. I didn't really ask. But fast forward, and I'm kind of picking up the reins again and kind of doing something a little bit in this space. It sucks in this that I can't play music, damn copyright laws and such, but I can at least get on and ramble about stories. And unlike the other show that I do with Will, the Bastard Cast, there's no we, it's me. I'm going to have guests on here. I plan on having people on from around the industry that I've met over the years of touring and helping with local shows and even, some festival work and stuff like that. Be it, people that I've met in the industry that I have somewhat of a cordial relationship with, or people that I've met that I actually have maintained true friendships with and such. Gonna have at least one promoter on to talk and stuff like that. And I kind of want this just to be a fun hangout for fans of metal and such. I've been in talks with Sean from Cage. He does his Instagram videos and YouTube stuff that's the Sean Peck Metal News of the Day, and I'm gonna have him probably do like a weekly or semi-weekly block on here of just talking about the best news to come out that week, or every 2 weeks, or whatever I wind up doing on the interval of this. I still haven't quite figured out a format yet. I don't know how long every episode's going to be. I don't know if there's going to be a set time. I know with the Bastard Cast, we usually try to keep it around, anywhere between 45 to 75 minutes. Probably going to keep it somewhere around in that with this, unless I were to get someone on that, just wants to ramble and us just lose track of time. I'm more than fine with that too, because, several of these people I haven't talked to in a while, so it'll be fun to catch up and, stories of old and stories of theirs that I'm not involved with and such. because I know some super talented people who also happen to be very talented storytellers and just general all-around funny motherfuckers. So, back to having started this, my wife said, hey, you used to really enjoy doing the radio show. Why don't you've got the equipment, you bought it for the Bastardcast, why don't you fucking do a music podcast? You love metal, and it would be another outlet for you to get your thoughts out and just talk about things. And I fucking loved the idea. I have a bunch of IDs left over from when I was doing Root of All Evil, so I had to go through and edit out KFAI and Root of All Evil off of them so I can use them on this. But like the one that I played earlier as sort of a break to come into this segment was Ian Hill from Judas Priest. I had the pleasure of meeting him and having him record an ID for me. Matt Barlow sent me one. Joey Belladonna from Anthrax sent me one, but he said Hell Bent for Leather instead of Hell Brent for Leather. Still, it's pretty funny. I'm gonna use it from time to time and stuff like that. I didn't want those to fucking go to waste. I got too much love for this and wanted to just get on here and ramble and talk about things that I enjoy, and hopefully some of you enjoy it too. From traveling out to Warrell Dane's funeral when he died, to staying in Warrell and Jim's house that same weekend, going on tour with To Die For and Virgin Black as their tour manager on the first tour I'd ever done that I had no idea what in the fuck it was that I was doing, and it actually wound up being the one and only full tour that I did. I did a small little regional tour with Into Eternity a few years later, but being friends with all the Into Eternity guys, Cage guys, watching fucking movies in a private movie theater with Iced Earth and fucking Candlemass and so many bands over the years that we've watched movies with and such, and just general things like that. I'm gonna try my damnedest not to get into any kind of politics on this, unlike my personal pages or sometimes on the Bastardcast when I get a wild hair up my ass. As I was telling a couple of people the other day, the only politics I'm ever going to get into on this is the politics of ecstasy from Nevermore. So, yeah, I think that's going to do for kind of an introduction in regards to why I wanted to do this podcast and such. So, with that,
greetings, brothers and sisters. This is Matt Barlow from Iced Earth and Pyramids. And you're listening to
So, back to getting that Judas Priest Painkiller on cassette story. So I get that. And like I said, that record in many, many, many ways changed my life forever. I legitimately wore that tape out. And I come to realize that, big drums and fast twin guitar and screeching, over the top heavy metal Rob Halford type vocals, that was my fucking bread and butter. That was what I wanted. That scratched every itch I had. Painkiller, from the moment the first drum on Painkiller starts to the moment the last little bit of One Shot at Glory, it's just a perfect record. And to this day, it is absolutely in my top 3 favorite records, if not my favorite record. And the only reason that there are 2 others that are in contention with it for being my top is because those mean a lot to me for other sentimental reasons. I'll go into a much deeper dive on the 2 of them later, but those would be Nevermore, Dreaming Neon Black, and Green Carnation, Light of Day, Day of Darkness. Both of those records had an immense impact on me during some real struggles in my life. My dad, not my father, but my dad, the man who raised me, for the most part, Jeff James, he's the one that would have actually gotten me into Rush and Black Sabbath and stuff like that. I mean, he got me into a lot of the other stuff I was listening to as well that wasn't metal, because he was kind of a jack of all trades musically. If it was rock, he probably liked it. But unfortunately, he committed suicide in August of 2002, and that I had a real hard time with that. I was in, August of 2002 would have been, I was just about to start my senior year in high school, and I was at work one morning, doing some HVAC work for a summer job with a acquaintance of my mom, and I was outside actually cutting his grass because it was a slow day, and I got the phone call that he had died, or at least was in the hospital. He had just shot himself, and I kind of spiraled into a super deep depression, and Dreaming Neon Black didn't hit me quite yet during that time. It did fairly soon afterwards, but Light of Day, Day of Darkness, I've said numerous times that that record, I think, is one of the reasons that I probably didn't follow suit. Like I said, I had a really, 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 really hard time right after that happened. Him and I weren't on the greatest of terms. We didn't dislike each other or anything like that. We just weren't as close as we were. I was a angst-ridden teenager, and I resented a lot having to go over there every other weekend because he and my mom had gotten a divorce a few years prior to that. And I went over there every other weekend with my sister, who, he was actually her father. But to me, he was dad, And I'd go over there, and I was a lazy fucking piece of shit kid who thought I knew better than everybody else. And I'd go over there, and, every fucking Saturday would be out working all day, cutting grass, doing odd jobs for people and such, because Jeff was incredibly poor and doing everything that he could to keep his head above water. And I didn't realize or understand that at the time. And had a really, really, really hard time with it. And so I just kind of stopped going. I'd see him when he were to come pick Bethany up, or I'd ride over there if Mom was taking Bethany over there or something or another. Like I said, and we'd talk to each other on the phone every now and then and such, but I couldn't forgive myself for the longest time when he decided to kill himself, because I thought that if I had been a better son and been more there for him, that I could have stopped him, or he would have called me and asked for help or wanted to talk or something. And I say this while staring at a picture of him on my wall, holding up a bass that he had caught. And yeah, I had a really, really, really hard time with that, and I considered going out as well. He killed himself, and then 2 weeks later, the first girlfriend I ever had decided to break up with me and tell me some things that I really wish I hadn't known, and it just was really bad timing. And so I kind of thought that I didn't have much to live for either, and I decided it was time to go and put a lot of thought into it. And then kind of snapped myself out of it. And I really attribute that to Green Carnation, Light of Day, Day of Darkness, because I'm like this now. If I get super fucking depressed, I'll put on a super depressing record, be it one of the two aforementioned records, or fucking Guilt Machine from Arion, from Arion, and just stuff in that vein, and I'll make myself hit rock bottom so that I have nowhere to go but up. Because I decided a long time ago that I was not going to do the same thing to my family that he did to me. And so I got that out of my head, and I figured, well, all right, the sooner that I hit rock bottom, the better. I can start to crawl back out again. And so that piece of self-solicited advice has worked out fairly well for me over the years. But, fast forward a little while later, I got to see Nevermore live and meet them and talk to Worrell for a long time. We'll go into that later. I'm going to do probably a few Nevermore and Sanctuary themed episodes where I'll bring people on in relation to them, be it Will, my host from the Bastard Cast, who's also a huge Nevermore fan, who went out to the funeral with me when Worrell unfortunately died, and just some other people in my life that are big Nevermore and Sanctuary fans. Or if I can get in touch with Jim, the bass player, I'll try to have him on too. He's in and out of incommunicado a lot of times. I may go a year without talking to him, 2 years without talking to him, but I'll see what I can do to get in contact with him and see if he'd be willing to come on. But then it all culminated at Prog Power quite a few years back now. I want to say it was probably 4 years ago, maybe 5 at this point, actually. Fuck, I don't remember. Where Green Carnation played. And they were going to play all of Light of Day, Day of Darkness. Now, at Prog Power every year, I originally started out as going as a fan. And then I met up with a guy named Lance King, who I'll definitely bring on the show sometime, who is a kind of a local legend in the metal community. He owns a record label and distribution company. He sang in several bands. He was in Balance of Power, Avian Pyramaze, Gemini, King's Machine, a ton of bands over the years. And he's in a couple of local cover bands now that have a pretty good following. But I started helping him, over a decade ago at this point, with his label, selling stuff every year at Prog Power and such. So whereas I started going down as a fan, I almost got a little jaded with it, where I'd spend less and less time every year watching bands and more time in the vendor's room, helping Lance, because that's why I was down there. He'd pay for my trip down there. He'd make sure that I had a place to stay. He'd make sure that I could get in and all that stuff. Paid for, a good amount of food and booze over the weekend. I had to pay for some, but he took probably a $1,200 to $1,500 trip, and I'd spend $300 to $500 the whole time I was down there, and that was including merch and buying CDs and stuff. So Lance really helped facilitate getting me to that festival some years where I didn't think I was going to be able to go. But, so, like I said, I would just spend more and more time in the vendor's room. I just didn't watch as many bands anymore. I hadn't really lost its magic for me. It's just, the bands that I'd wanted to see, I'd already seen. And the other bands just weren't my thing, because it's Prog Power. And when I first started going, I was much more of a power head. Now I'm about half and half, depending on the prog band. And that's in regards to the festival. I mean, overall, I listen to very little power metal anymore, with the exception of the new Halloween, which is awesome, by the way. I listen to more prog, and it's got to be something that scratches my itch. I listen to a lot of Arion and Leprous and stuff like that. But so Glenn had Green Carnation there one year, and they were going to play all of Light of Day, Day of Darkness. And had a copy of it on vinyl. Immediately, I was like, got to take this. I got to get the guys to sign it. Because I collect signed vinyl and stuff like that. And I was like, well, this is definitely a set I'm gonna stay in there for. Because usually I'll go in, if it's a band that I like, I'll go in and watch. I'll watch 4 or 5 songs, and then I go back out to the tables, and I'm like, hey, Lance, they're kicking ass. Go in there and watch a few songs or something. I got the table. But I'd kind of made a deal with him. I'm like, look, I need to do this. And he's like, nope, I completely get it. They're not necessarily my thing anyways. I like them, but I don't love them, and I know you love them. So go watch them. So excuse me a second. So I hear that they're going on, and I make a beeline for a seat. I didn't want to stand for this. Center Stage in Atlanta, where Prog Power is held, has nice stadium seating, and I wanted to find a good seat that I could sit in kind of off on my own a little bit, because I knew that this was going to be an immensely emotional experience for me, and I wanted to soak it all in. And, For those of you that know me in real life, I'm a pretty gruff guy. I curse a lot. I drink whiskey. I smoke cigars. I'm brash. I'm very headstrong and cocksure. Oftentimes I just don't fucking give a fuck. Not all the time. I don't go out of my way to offend people unless they're asking for it. Or let me say, I don't go out of my way to offend the uninitiated. Around my friends, horrible things come out of my mouth, as come out of theirs, because we're just trying to pop each other. But, in a regular public setting, like going to a restaurant or something like that, I tip well. I'm not an asshole to waiters and waitresses and stuff like that. So, but I knew that this was going to be an emotionally exhausting experience to watch this. But I knew I had to, and I desperately wanted to. So, I found me a spot to sit down, and I said, okay, let's do this, because I knew that the set was going to be just that song. And to my knowledge, they didn't play anything else. It was just that. But, that song is also an entire album. It's, well in the, I want to say, late 50-minute range. Let's see. I've got my phone right in front of me, and it's on here. So, let's see. Green Carnation. And Light of Day, Day of Darkness clocks in at 1 hour. And specifically, exactly 1 hour and 7 seconds. So I said, all right, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch this. And I'm not afraid to say I bawled my eyes out. I let go of a lot of guilt that day. It was very much a religious experience for me. You talk about people getting saved or baptized in Christianity and whatnot and such. And, I used to be a good little Christian boy when I was in middle school. I got away from that. But it was very much a baptism in metal. It truly was a religious experience for me. And I shed a lot of guilt and I shed a lot of tears. And I came out of that a different person. And I found them in the courtyard after the show, back at the Prague Power Hotel. And I talked to them and got pictures and stuff. And I let them know exactly what that did for me. And, I'm not great with Norwegian names. Ingrid, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry. Kjetil, Kjeitil, if I remember correctly, their lead singer. He was almost brought to tears because of the story that I told him. And I just said, guys, you have no idea. This record quite literally saved my life. And I greatly appreciate that and owe you something that I'll never be able to repay. And, you go back and you think about it. I got to imagine that's got to be incredibly emotionally jarring for someone to hear unsolicited. For some just random that's half drunk in a fucking metal patch vest and a kilt walk up to you and tell you that you are the reason that he is still alive. And that's exactly what fucking happened. But I'm in a much better place mentally now than I was at that time, and certainly before that time. And I just, I owe music and metal kind of everything. I don't get to listen to it quite as much these days as I'd like, because I listen to a lot of podcasts myself, and I find myself every week increasingly more and more behind in regards to trying to stay kept up with shows that I'm listening to, and having to skip things that may or may not, be something that I really want to hear. There's not enough time in the day. I've got a job now that I have to be a little more attentive, where I can't just have it on all the time like I did with FedEx. I had it in one ear all the time, and I could listen, 8, 10, 12 hours a day all day. At the job that I got now, I'm constantly up and down. I got to answer the phone every once in a while and stuff like that. So, I can't be as caught up on podcasts as I could, like I said, when I worked at FedEx, whereas I could go a day or two a week at FedEx and not have to listen to a single podcast because I'd caught up and I could just listen to music. Can't do that so much now. So I try to squeeze in a few hours a week of listening to stuff. This week's been the new Halloween It's fucking awesome. I really enjoy it. I'm really glad they're all back together again, minus Ingo. Rest in peace. But at least the surviving members are back together, and there's definitely some chemistry there, and they're definitely enjoying it, it seems, just based on interviews and stuff that I've heard. The new Talk is Jericho interview with both Andy Darris and Michael Kiske, Weekath being the guitar player. No, it was Michael Kiske and Andy Darris, the two singers, on there, and they talked to Chris for a little over an hour. That was a really great, enlightening podcast. They talked about a lot of things involving, they're working together and getting along and stuff like that. And I really like to hear that. I like seeing bands that meant a lot to me over the years come back now with different iterations and be as big, if not bigger, than they were before. Because they fucking deserve it. I mean, I saw Halloween in Atlanta in 2002 or 2003 on the, I want to say it was the Rabbit Don't Come Easy tour, I think. And it was destitute. There just weren't a lot of people there at all. But then you see them now fucking, headlining Wacken and stuff like that. Like, I that fucking makes me happy. And that's something that I'll be very, very, very happy about when all this fucking COVID nonsense is over, where we can, finally get back to shows and stuff again. I think we're getting there. I truly do. I got tickets for a pre-show that's coming here. They weren't originally coming here. They were going to Milwaukee. We had tickets for that, and then found out that they are playing here. So we got a refund on the Milwaukee tickets and said, fuck it, we're going here, and got really good fucking tickets for that. So I'm stoked to be able to see Priest for, God, what's probably going to be the 8th or 9th time, I think. I've seen them so many times at this point. But, who knows? It might be the last time I ever see Priest. I don't know. But I'm really hoping that it's not, considering that they are my favorite band. And I know they're getting older, but, at the same time, they're the only band that I have 2 tattoos dedicated to. Of my musical-themed tattoos that I've got a Judas Priest tattoo on my right shoulder that is just the Pitchfork logo, just a simple black grayscale deal. Nothing special about it. It's the first tattoo I ever got. I got it fairly drunk in Texas on tour in 2007 by a guy that looked like a homeless Rob Zombie. Yes, I realize that's redundant, but he did. And then a few years later, longer than that, probably 2011, 2010, I got the Nevermore logo on my left shoulder. Again, just a grayscale deal. Nothing super special there. In fact, it probably needs some touching up. On the back of my right calf, I've got the Iced Earth Set Abomine cover of Alive in Athens, but instead of him holding the Greek flag, he is holding the Sons of Liberty flag, which is a nod to John's other project that he had called Sons of Liberty. And then I've got 2 tattoos on my thighs. One is a giant Mandalorian helmet that is made to look like the Motorhead Warpig logo, and it says Motorhead Mandalore with the tusks and the chains and the drool and stuff coming off of a Mandalorian helmet in the Boba style. And then on the other side, I've got Hell Brent for leather, Killing Machine. Again, another Boba Fett style Mandalorian helmet, but this one is made to look like the face and crown cover of Hell Bent for leather / Killing Machine. Hell Bent for leather in the United States, Killing Machine everywhere else in the world. CBS didn't think that it was a very good call to call it Killing Machine here in the United States, so they didn't. But so yeah, my love for Judas Priest runs very, very, very deep. So yeah, starting to come up here on about 50 minutes, so I think I'm gonna start to wind this one down. I don't want to blow my whole wad immediately. I've got stories upon stories upon stories to talk about things, so I'm really looking forward to doing this. I hope that the few of you who have tuned into this have enjoyed it. I'm not expecting this to take off or get huge or anything like that immediately, but it'd be cool if it did. But again, I have realistic expectations, and it may be like the Bastard Cast, where that's been going on for a little less than a year now, and we're up to about 1,700 downloads total on that. I'm proud of that considering what it is. It's definitely not a podcast that you want to listen to if you were even the least bit offended. We like to call ourselves the third most offensive podcast on the planet, behind In Hot Water and Legion of Skanks, because we're nowhere near as offensive or as funny as any of those five guys. But, so with that, I'm going to fucking sign out of this, and I fucking listen to music. It really does make the world go better. I thoroughly believe that that music is responsible for a lot of the good in the world, and probably has prevented some bad in the world. And I really do think that even if it's not a worldwide phenomenon in regards to music having healing and positive properties, I absolutely think it's that way on an individual basis. I know that it has been for me. So until next time, this is Brent for Leather, and I'm out.